Alright, I've been getting requested this a lot over the last few weeks, so I'm finally going to give you half of what you want. Today I'm going to be going through how to make a good first team in Dragon City. And what I mean by first team is the very first team that you will be ideally planning to take to max level or close to max level, so level 70 with 5 stars on each of them. So, one really important thing when it comes to creating your first team in Dragon City is, can the dragons actually be obtained, and how good are each of the individual dragons? But actually obtaining them is of course going to be the hard part, because I mean, this game has tons of stuff in it. We've got all these different events, we have nearly 2,000 dragons in the codex, so the question that a lot of players have is, what the heck do I even start to even think to pick? And I've put together a quick sort of graphic that sort of explains what you're going to want in a team right here. So, the way that I split it up into my advice as to building your first team is that ideally you are going to want a legendary VIP, a heroic dragon, either a regular heroic or a VIP heroic, and third, you might want to throw in a breedable or rescue dragon. So this is the format that I always recommend for your very first team. Reason being that legendary VIPs use Joker Orbs or trading to empower. Heroics are going to use heroic Joker Orbs or trading to empower. And then breedables and rescues won't use any Jokers to empower because you're going to be breeding or rescuing them. So with legendary VIPs, there are tons of different options, and honestly, if you try and search by legendaries in this game, you're just going to find all sorts of stuff. So trying to search in-game like this probably isn't going to help you too much. If you want to have an idea of what the good VIP legends are, even though the list wasn't perfect, I did do a list ranking all of the different VIP dragons in this game. It's the Dragon City VIP dragons tier list that was uploaded a few months ago, and although it's not exactly perfect and people are going to disagree, gives you a very general idea of what ranking each legendary VIP gets. But honestly, any of the dragons in the list you can use as part of your first team if you want to, but there are some very, very good dragons in the game. And so this little graphic here shows you some of what I would say would be the more interesting and better options. So we've got dragons like Ambition Karma, we have Blood God Vampire, we have Arcana Death. I've thrown Corrupted Legend in here, but I want to put in a big caveat that you're probably not going to be able to get him as a new player, but you can easily end up getting your hands on these 3 dragons here that I've thrown into a league battle, for example, because Blood God Vampire, he is a vampire. They're 100 orb dragons, which means that you only need a single orb of this dragon via trading, and then you can summon him during a summon happy hour. So he is a really good option because he's a vampire. He's a good vampire with a nice primary early on, and you can easily take him to level 70 and get a very good value dragon that heals your team, because his skill, well, both of them actually heal. We've got Leech Fang and we've got Blood Eclipse. So he's a double healer in that sense, but he gives healing to all of your dragons. So he's a very good stable dragon, and he gets much better later on. Before he gets perked up on maxed, he's not quite as good, but max ranks later on, he is a very, very strong dragon. So dragons like him that are just very easy to obtain. Other vampires on this, you can see dragons such as Hexed, you could use Sinful, you could even use Prideful if you really want to. I just don't really recommend it because of the flame element. But you can use any of those dragons if you manage to get a hold of any of them, especially if you manage to get a hold of the Walking Dead dragon somehow, you can use that. But it's just about getting one of these good legendary VIPs. So then in the second column we have the heroic dragons, and so I have thrown regular heroics alongside VIP heroics, but of course the main problem with VIP heroics is the fact that how the heck are you going to get your hands on them, especially if you are a free-to-play player, because I mean, we have dragons like Norn, which I need to take the legendary off. Norn is an insanely good dragon. Free to play, she is an insanely good dragon. Same with high Arcana Judgment. Like, Arcana Judgment is an insanely good dragon, like arguably one of the best dragons in the game, free to play without skin. But getting these dragons free to play is very, very, very difficult for even players like myself, so you're probably not going to have these heroics on hand. But you have probably got at least 1 or 2 heroics from various events, or perhaps even just gotten heroics from like heroic races, because honestly getting heroics is not that difficult. Honestly, it is not. Empowering them is the hard part, but the recent heroic races have made this a hell of a lot easier. And so, as a recent heroic race dragon, we have, in this case, we have High Nakria. So that's why I have thrown this dragon in as a second option. And then third, we have that breedable dragon in the form of Cosmic Detonation. And I have made an entire video on how you can breed this dragon, but you could use a rescue dragon instead. So we have in the little infographic, Cosmic Detonation being a breedable, we have Deluge being a rescue dragon, and Cosmic Detonation and Deluge. Deluge is basically the water type version of Cosmic Detonation. He also has a multi-hit skill, but he is a rescue dragon, so you can go and rescue him. The only problem that you'll have as a new player with rescuing dragons is, of course, that you might not have that many keys. So you might not be able to max out a Deluge dragon for, well, quite some time. It depends on how grindy you've been with events that have keys in them, I suppose. But you can rescue as many Deluge dragons or any other rescue dragon that you want, really. You don't even have to rescue Deluge. He does have a skill, which is why a lot of people choose him. But you could pick a dragon that has like ancient world elements if you want like the summon dragon or a dream dragon. But having a rescue or breedable dragon just means that it is going to allow you to work on 3 different dragons at once. Because otherwise, if you picked 3 legendary VIPs, they'd all be using the same Joker Orbs type. And trust me, you will not get maxed out dragons for an incredibly long time if you handle it like that. So a team like this, with this setup, legendary VIP, heroic, breedable rescue in the 3rd slot allows you to work on 3 good dragons at once. Now, I'm sure you get the general idea. You can pick any heroic that you want in the game, pretty much. It's mainly down to the elements. The legendary VIPs mainly come down to how good their skills are, and the breedable and rescue dragons, well, it's down to how easy they are to get, and also generally how good they are and if they have any additional skills on top. But primarily the 3rd slot is just a really easy dragon to get. But there are some big caveats with me saying this, because a team such as this one right here, there is a problem with this team, and you might have already noticed it, is actually the fact that there are duplicated elements. In this team in particular, we have technically 2 duplicated elements in the form of Flame and Legend. Now, this isn't a huge issue, but the more you duplicate elements on your team, the worse off it's going to be. And the reason that I say that is because we have arenas. And now, to do really well in every single arena, you will need tons of dragons. And I mean like tons of level 60 plus, level 70 dragons. But the reason why is because if you look at the top of the screen right here, you'll see that in Masters Arena, we have these rules that are set out. So in this Masters 1 arena, we have Pure Boosted, War Allowed, and Happy Banned. But only War Dragons, so dragons that have the War element, are allowed to play in the arena. So, can you imagine what would happen if on your 3 main dragons team that you pick, every single one of them has the War element? That's it. If you run into a specific arena that bans that element, you are not going to have any dragons available. And so, for that reason, it is primarily because of arena, I would highly recommend leveling up a range of different elements. Well, I should say dragons with a range of different elements. Duplicating 1 or 2 elements isn't the end of the world, but if you go above about 2, I would say that you're getting into iffy territory. Of course, if your dragons are just decent anyway, it might not be the end of the world, but make sure at the very least that all 3 of your dragons do not share the same element, or you may get completely screwed over during certain arenas. But in saying that, like I said, this is still a very, very good team. And, you know, if we could find a middle dragon that has different elements, because, you know, we've got Nakria here. We don't have to use Nakria. For this middle slot, we could pick out any heroic that we wanted, really. So any dragon that has elements. So we could pick High Famine, for instance. Like, look at that. That is a nice selection of elements. The only duplication is the double flame that Daddy Sunbringer has. But like, we have a team like this. High Famine, despite what people say, is actually quite useful in some situations. So for a starting team, this is a really, really solid selection, honestly. But you might not want to pick Blood God. Maybe Senor Stinky is not the dragon that you want. So in that case, you'd have to think, what sort of legendary dragons do you have available that you might want to use? Maybe you're someone that, I don't know, wants to use Hexed instead. Then the problem with Hexed is that we are going to be duplicating Flame again, and we would ideally want to avoid that. So then we look through our list of dragons or example dragons and we think, oh, what dragon could we replace this one with? And then the option could be, I don't know, we could go with Deluge. So then the only thing that we'd have to double check on that is that we're not duplicating any elements with the middle heroic dragon that we pick. And there you go, another pretty solid team comp. You know, it might not be perfect, and of course there might be better options later on, like the Walking Dead dragons, other really, really good legendaries or heroic VIPs. But if you've got a team or a selection of dragons like this is going to work out so well for you early on. Again, Hexed, another incredibly easy dragon to get a hold of. 2 really, really good skills. Deluge has Drowning Deluge, which hits 3 to 4 times. He's got unique elements. And then High Famine is just a heroic, and heroics are Cat 11, so they are just strong dragons. So I hope that this explanation makes sense. This is what I always recommend to players. If you ask me, Quacks, my team is X, Y, and Z, like, can I do anything else to it? This is what I'm going to recommend to you every single time. But again, this is for your first team, your first main team where you're going to take dragons up to level 70, which means that I know until you actually get different dragons and get set up properly, you're not actually going to be making your way to master straight away, because I mean, you're going to have to make your way all the way through the different arenas, all the way up to masters. And in that case, you are definitely going to have to make sure that you have a range of different dragons to get your way all the way through here. So I think it's actually even more important that you have a range of dragons to get you through these other arenas on your way to the top as well. But it is definitely the main, I would say the main actual game when it starts is when you get to Masters Arenas, because this is like the true fighting of the game. Before this, it's just sort of a warm-up, but this is the true focus, this is the true end game, long game in Dragon City outside of just collecting more dragons. But this is what you should be basing your teams on. This is what you should be basing your decision making on, because for league battles, the enemies cap out at level 40. So it doesn't actually matter who is on your team as long as you have a set of dragons that can beat any league battle. So, you know, you could pick anything that you want, basically. Like, I don't know, we've got 3 dragons here. Even though we're duplicating an element here, this is a pretty good team combination, and this is one that I have used for a very long time. And so, you know, you go into a battle, but the enemies are all going to be level 40s. They're never going to go beyond level 40. So even if you only have like level 55 dragons, as long as they can take out these league battle dragons, you don't actually have to worry about league battles ever again. So having a breedable like Morpheus, and then we've got our heroic, and then we've got our legendary VIP in the form of Sinful. And so I'm not giving you this advice without trying it out myself. This is exactly what I did to get me prepared and get me ready to do well in arenas and do well in other events as well, and just in general in battling in Dragon City. So this is my own tried and tested method. This was sort of the idea that I put together while I was going through. Again, doesn't mean it's perfect, and it doesn't mean that you can't optimize the choices that you go with, but this combination, this general idea is what will push you through the ranks. So I hope that all makes sense. If anything from this doesn't make sense, of course, feel free to hit me up in the comments or in my Discord server. But generally speaking, this is the range of dragons. One thing I will say about the breedables and rescues is I have put a dragon such as Kratos in there. And now, if you take a look at Kratos in game, you're probably going to be like, why the hell have you suggested that dragon? But the reason why I would suggest dragons like Kratos, even if they only have 2 elements, is because they are just that easy to breed. So if you need a quick, really quick level 70 or at least E5 dragon, and you don't want to be investing as many breeding dens into getting dragons like Cosmic Detonation, you don't have the keys for Deluge, you can just breed a very quick Kratos dragon and max it, or at least E4 it even, then level him up, and he will carry you in the very early game. I would recommend replacing him after that, because again, he's only got 2 elements, which can have its big downsides, but Kratos is even used in the current war arena, Pure is boosted, so he'll even be useful to you in Masters arenas, despite him only having 2 elements. So please bear that in mind. Just pick a really easy breedable dragon. You could even have 2 legendary VIPs and a heroic on your team if you really wanted to, but then you could still be working on a rescue dragon or a breedable on the site. So then you could even be working on 4 dragons, but considering you're only going to have so many legendary jokers and heroic jokers, this is going to be my advice to you. But anyway, I thought I would throw that out there because I have been getting tons of questions about how to make a team. But this is the staple, this is the baseline. Pick out the dragons that you want and make sure they have a good variety of different elements if you can. You can worry about the meta because, you know, we've got specific heroic VIPs that are used a lot. Again, we've got dragons like Hadge, we've got dragons like Norn. I know that the pay-to-win players are going to have High Ascended Supreme, possibly with skins, so you might want to get some dragons that are super effective against Haz, and make sure that they're not weak to him as well, so you don't want to be picking those dual perceptions, you know? Although you can pick one dragon that's weak to him as long as you know you can actually counter him at some point. But that's getting a little bit over the top. The main thing is actually building your baseline team first. And so rather than worrying too much about meta, just work on building the basics first. And then you can worry about meta later when you get more than 3 dragons. So anyway, that is this for today. If you want to know how to build a true Masters tier team that can be anything, well, that's not really going to be true, and that is going to be a very different story to this one, because even though this time it's sort of like, yeah, you can pick this dragon if you want, yeah, you can pick this breedable if you want, you cannot do that if you were wanting to pick the best team in the entire world. It would mainly be heroic VIPs and like the Walking Dead dragons, but that's another story for another day. But anyway, I appreciate you joining me here today, and I wish you the best of luck with picking up any of these dragons. I hope that you can get your hands on some heroic VIPs if you're free to play like myself. And, you know, I got lucky with that voodoo yesterday, but that was not intentional. I didn't mean to game the system, but hey, that's here we are. He is sitting in my storage, and maybe I'll just leave him there for a good while, but at least he's sitting there, so we'll use him one day. But anyway, I appreciate you joining me here today. Good luck, and until next time, have fun.